Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is life illuminated. By Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Hello, welcome back to Access to Democracy. I'm your guest host, Holly Jenkins, and very happy to be here today with a first-time guest, our local paper reporter, Andy Rogers with the Sun Thisweek. So thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. I have to say on the way here today, I stopped in my mailbox and picked up the paper, and there it was in my mail. So we'll talk about the importance of our local media here in the community.
Good.
But why don't we start? Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came into journalism?
Sure, yeah. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I took those aptitude tests, and journalism came up a couple times.
Ah.
And so I let that marinate in my mind for a few years. Went to college, didn't know quite what I wanted to do. Figured I had to do something. So one day I walked into the student-run paper there and decided to write some movie reviews. Tried that out, wrote some movie reviews, and just kind of worked my way up from there. Started covering Battle of the Bands to covering hockey games. I went to college at Mankato, so they had a Division I hockey at the time, so it was exciting got to cover the hockey, and then I eventually worked my way up to become the editor-in-chief there. So I was in charge of the paper and had a lot of fun with it. And then when I graduated, worked for a couple other papers, and settled in here at Sun Thisweek about 16 years ago.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. So you kind of stuck with journalism, print media your whole career.
Print media, yeah, my whole career. I always was a newspaper man.
Any difference, what do you see as the biggest difference or advantages or disadvantages to print versus broadcaster?
Well, oh geez, broadcast, well, in print you can say a lot more than you can in broadcast. I mean, when you see exactly what they talk about on a broadcast TV show, it's actually quite small. With a newspaper, you can get more in depth. You can write more at length about specific topic. It doesn't have to fit in 3 minutes. It can be long, or it can be short. It can be whatever. And you also, one of the best parts about a newspaper is that you can work on a story for a while. If you need it. We are a weekly paper, so if it takes a week, if it takes 2 weeks, it's okay. We don't have to turn it around super fast all the time.
You can spend a little more time on it.
We can spend a little bit more time on it, yeah.
So a job of a journalist, I'm guessing, is not necessarily always 9 to 5, or is it what's a typical week like for you? What does it look like?
A 9 to 5? No, I mean, my wife and kids would like it to be 9 to 5.
I would figure that gets in the way a little. I wouldn't say they get in the way. The job gets in the way a little bit with a normal family.
Correct. Yeah.
Routine.
At least one night a week, I'm working until 11 o'clock at night. Whether it's a city council meeting or an event that I'm covering of some kind. I mean, tomorrow there's a tree lighting ceremony that I'll probably be at, taking pictures.
Where's the tree lighting ceremony?
In Rosemount. I also cover the city of Rosemount.
That'll be after this show goes
sure.
off, but it's getting to be that time of year with a lot of extra events and whatnot.
Egan's is coming up too. They're going to have a
Okay.
tree lighting ceremony, and there's all these events.
All right. So covering Egan and Rosemount, there is an abundance of issues and events and meetings. And how do you decide? How do you pick and choose? Is it reader tips that come in? Do you sort of have a routine that you're going to cover certain areas? How do you decide what's going to be the most relevant and important for readers?
Well, yeah, we rely on a lot of different methods of gathering stories. But I mean, one of the main sources is what happens in the city at the city council meetings. I cover both. I watch every single city council meeting. Sometimes I watch planning commission meetings if there's a big development coming through. Sometimes a new business coming into town. That's a big way of generating stories. And they're at least twice a month, if not, then sometimes they have special city council meetings. So they might have up to 4 meetings a month that I'll watch. And plus, yeah, there's events happening. I mean, news sometimes just happens. I mean, there's things that just happen. There's a car crash, there's a police event, there's a fire, there's something that happens. There's an event. There's 4th of July festival in town. I mean, that consumes my 4th of July and events like that. And then, yeah, and people let me know. People email me and say, hey, I got a new business coming to town, or hey, do you know that something's happening that might be of interest, or are you aware of this? And a lot of times we don't know, and that's generally how I don't, sometimes, every once in a while, I'll be like, what am I going to write about today? And so then I get to kind of come up with something, but that doesn't happen
You
too
could
often.
always give us a call here at Access to Democracy.
Sure.
We'll give you a tip or two.
Sure.
So fake news is the big vibe in the national news and the state news even.
So
do you get impacted at all by the people calling you out for fake news? Has that hit the local level, or is that just outside of your
I mean,
area?
Fake news. I mean, so when I think of fake news, I think of someone deliberately writing something that's incorrect.
Okay.
You know, reporting something that's incorrect. And
I think that's accurate, but
yeah,
I think that
I don't think other
just
people
call you out as saying this is fake news. Don't listen to what the Sun Thisweek is saying. They're making it up,
Yeah,
even if it's not. But does that happen? Do you get called out like that?
No, I guess if no one has ever deliberately accused me of printing something inaccurately on purpose. I
Right.
mean, that version of fake news. If it's a story they don't like, that they don't think is, I'm highlighting the wrong thing or it's biased, sure, maybe someone says, hey, that's fake news, don't listen to them or whatever. But not too often. I mean, I think a lot of that comes in the politic realm of things. We don't, we certainly cover politics. There's certainly a lot of Republican and Democratic stuff that happens in our area, but at the city level, we don't, I'm looking for facts. I've certainly been wrong about things in the past. But I never did it on purpose.
Right. And I think that's the difference, is that even if it usually is fact-based, but if somebody doesn't like the sound of it, they might call it out as being fake, and it's not. It's just stated as it is.
My job is to look for facts and then report on them and translate, summarize information so people are informed.
So the paper, like I said, when I get it in the mail, I'm excited because this is my schools, it's my local elected officials, it's my neighbors, it's people I know, it's my shops, it's such an important source to pull our community together. It gives really, the community paper helps strengthen our neighborhoods and whatnot. And a big part of that is covering local government. And you're not going to see much written about the city council meetings or county commissioner meetings. And now I know that you mentioned talking a lot about reporting on city politics. How does county, where does that come into play with the local paper? It
comes into play. We don't have an individual dedicated to covering the county. We have in the past, but as adjustments are made, that role has fallen upon us as to sort of follow what happens with the county. So yeah, I mean, I review the agendas to see what happens in the county, and obviously there are things that happen in the county. I'm in touch with the area commissioners and follow through them. There's a lot of things going on with the county, from parks to roads they do a lot of stuff.
But right now we don't have a local person or a person within the Sun that would follow the county news.
No,
necessarily.
Not necessarily. It's all of our individual reporters. So if there's an event, if there's something affecting Egan, if it's Lebanon Hills or County Road 3
my
or
favorite
something,
topics.
something like that. That is county specific, and that's on me to follow up
so
on
if it's
that.
a county issue that focuses on Rosemount or Egan, you might be there.
I might be there.
Or maybe
for
one
sure.
of the other city reporters. So it kind of gets, I want to
Yeah.
say, just portioned out depending on who's covering the cities.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how hard is it to get to these types of meetings when they're not being video? City council, you
Yeah.
mentioned that you watch the meetings.
I watch the meetings.
Do you feel that the county should be video recording their meetings to make it easier, greater transparency, easier for you to report on?
Oh yeah, I mean, Egan records and broadcasts just about everything,
Right,
and it's
right.
great for me because I can refer back to things. They broadcast their workshops. They Park and Rec Commission. I was watching that earlier today, just catching up on things. So yeah, I mean, I would, if
It would make it a lot easier.
we deeply appreciate it when people stream things and post their videos online because then we can follow up and we can catch things. Because there's been a lot of times where I'll follow up and be like, hey, County Commissioner, I heard that this is happening, but I didn't see a whole lot of discussion about it in the actual streamed meeting, the commissioner meeting, but it was
Right.
more discussed in maybe a different meeting.
In the committee meetings.
In a committee
because
meeting.
like you said, they talk a lot about parks, and that's part of a committee meeting
Yeah.
when the discussion is taking place. And unless you can attend that meeting,
Right.
it's pretty tough it makes it hard for you to report on it, makes it hard for people to know what's happening.
Correct.
So really part of your job, bringing greater transparency and awareness to what's happening, is much more challenging when these aren't being broadcast.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's
think
more
that's the same for
challenging.
anybody.
I guess
Yeah.
not everything's always been streamed online. I mean, there's people got it done years ago without that. But
So one of the trends that we keep seeing now across the country, in fact, is that here are our local papers that are so important to strengthen our community. Everything from student athletes and highlighting what's happening in the schools, the social events, the volunteering events, and especially the accountability to local governments. But these smaller papers, these local papers, are starting to disappear. And in fact, I read that there was roughly 1,400 cities now that have lost their local papers across the country. And that's really concerning because when we're not seeing, especially the accountability to the local government, we're seeing greater increases in spending and other inefficiencies that have, the studies have shown that when the local paper goes away, these local governments, nobody's really watching out like they could be. So what is Sun Thisweek doing to try to get ahead of that curve? I mean, are you taking that as changing a strategy, something so that we don't want anyone to fall victim? These local papers are so important, and yet they're disappearing. So is this just a trend? Is there something the Sun Thisweek or people are doing in the local news industry to make sure this important source stays alive?
well, yeah, I mean, of course, we want to stay in business.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
we would love
absolutely.
to continue. I would love to continue doing what we do, and if I would love to have more, hands to help us out. But you're right. I mean, papers have faded away. That we've had competitors fall out of the market. We've merged with some. Some have gone away. Some have drastically decreased. And I hope we don't. I hope someone is always going to the city council meetings and reporting on. I hope society, as a person who, as a resident, I hope someone is always at city council meetings to see what's going on, so they know. And yeah, I mean, my role is to make sure to cover it. To survive. My role is to do a good job to make sure other people continue to be informed, and hopefully they see that as a value to them, and continue reading and continue engaging, because it is important. I think it's very important. I mean, obviously, it's great to know where your tax dollars go. It's important to know. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know what the role of a city or a school district or a county, and they get their property tax bill, and they're not so sure why it's being raised, and it's important to know.
Right. Absolutely. People should know how their money is being spent, and if it's increasing,
Yeah,
why?
why?
Why are my taxes increasing? Is that consistent with your with the trends that you want to see for your communities? You talked a little bit about the school board, and that's another area that would likely be left in the dark if it wasn't for local community papers.
Correct, yeah.
Really tough to, but is the Sun Thisweek now, they have recently switched from being delivered automatically into your post box to now people they can get it, but you have to register for a free delivery to your mailbox.
Correct.
And was there any specific reason for that? I'm guessing it's because there's not so many newspaper boxes around anymore.
Well, I mean, paper costs money. Paper costs money, and to print them. And so, if you're looking to save money, I think that was it. It wasn't my decision. I would love everybody to read it and get it for free and pick it up wherever they want. But you know, it was for various different reasons. I mean, it wasn't my decision. But yeah, you're right. We do now. It is still free. I mean, this is I think it's a unique and positive situation that this is a free paper. You can read it, you can ask for it, and it will be delivered to you.
And you're welcome to contribute. So people can help contribute, and they should, because it's an important product. And if you are, I think the setup is ideal, because if you're in a position to be able to help support financially, we should be doing that. If you can't, that doesn't mean that the news isn't any more accessible to you, because it is. You can sign up for free delivery.
We didn't do that so less people would read our
right,
paper.
Of course not.
I know we wanted to, and we do push, you know, we're people, we would love it if people did continue to subscribe and read the paper, and it's free, and you can get it delivered in your mailbox.
Right, and I think you can pick it up in different areas throughout the city as well.
Gas stations and libraries and coffee shops. I know we have a number of drop boxes. I often refer to our website because there's a long list of them.
And so you do have an online presence. It's not just print.
Correct. Yeah, we do have an online presence. Okay. Yes, that is true.
And Sun Thisweek is one of several community newspapers run by a hometown source.
Hometown Source, I think, is I mean, maybe the website.
Sort of an umbrella. Okay. Now, do these community papers in our region work together on certain issues, or just to have a consistency among any of them, or are they truly all separate entities?
No, I mean, no. These are the Sun Thisweek. It's the same office that does the Dakota County Tribune. The people, it's the same blend. I also technically work for the Dakota County Tribune, covering Rosemont, because that community. So a lot of the communities in Dakota County is done out of the same office, but it's the same company as that does Bloomington, some West Metro, and then it's from there. I mean, it's a nationwide company.
And so they might be the publisher, but it's all different individual entities. Okay, so they don't all work together.
No, but I mean, I'm often in contact with other reporters at other offices, like Bloomington. We'll share stories from Bloomington, something that's happening, or.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to getting source of news. You'll often see the press release got put out, and if a press release comes your way, is that just taken as this is the news that I'm going to report? Do you verify what you hear in a press release, or do you simply put it out there?
Well, it depends. I mean, I guess like a press release,
I'm just curious, because I know that there's been some recent news, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that people are feeling some has been a little bit misleading, not intentional, but it's just based on press releases that go out. So how does a reporter take a press release, as factual, or as, okay, here's something that somebody would like me to say, I have to check the details of it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess generally you check the source of the press release.
Okay.
You know, and we receive a lot of press releases, area businesses opening up, stuff going on with the county that they'll just let us know, and usually we'll take it at face value.
Okay.
You know, we'll look at the source. I mean, if it's just if it's from an agency or whatever, but I mean, we'll look through it.
Yeah.
And we'll if anything is misleading or whatever, or we can if it came from a news release, and if it's part of a larger story, we can just say that this is what was written in a news release.
Right.
This is
and
what
just
came
call it
from
out as this is the source, and this is what
the source.
they said.
This is where we got the information from. If that's what they told us.
Do you think there's a place for investigative journalism in local?
Sure. Yeah.
Paper.
Of course.
Is there much that happens at the Sun? Because I don't see a lot of it anymore in the larger papers, and the national ones maybe, but you don't see a lot of investigative reporting done in some of our larger papers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a reason for that, or if there is a role for it maybe in the local papers instead of the larger Star Tribunes and Pioneer Press.
For sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a role for investigating and getting in. I've had it's not a particular strong suit of mine. It doesn't fit my skill set super well, but I have done long investigations into items before, and it's going to be very time consuming.
Sure.
And there's all these other, then there's other things that kind of pile on top of it. So I think a lot of it has to do with time and effort, but I think it's definitely worth it. I mean, it's definitely an important part to be a watchdog and to make sure
Right.
everything's going as it should.
Yeah. So when you look back, do you have any favorite stories that you've covered in the past?
In the past? Whew. Well, I was a sports reporter for many years. I covered high school sports, and I went to a lot of exciting games. There were some really fun football games I went to. I really like the stories that I find on my own, the feature stories. A couple years ago, I did a story about some people who did a race, the Arrowhead 135.
Oh,
it's a
sure.
135-mile race in the middle of winter. It never gets above like -30. And a group of guys from Burnsville regularly did it, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that
I've been
sounds
talking
great.
to those guys about that. I guess that's the first thing that popped into my head
Okay.
was that story was really fun.
What about any hot issues that you're working on today?
Today was right before I got in here. That I received an update to the city. There's a group of residents in Eagan who are would like it to be quieter from the airport.
Okay. Okay.
Would like the airport. Some planes have been increasingly flying over their head, so they have asked the city, and then the city goes to another commission, and the commission to another commission, and eventually this list of requests is going to go to the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and they're the ones who decide, really. But I guess they received some promising news. Not everything they wanted is going to happen, but
And I
some
would-
stuff will.
I
So
would say that that's usually the case with
Yeah.
any situation. And
Right.
the current edition now, of course,
Yeah.
I want to just mention that
Yes.
because this is such an area of concern here in Eagan because of this recent incident, but it really goes well beyond just this particular incident. And it's a stretch of roadway that the public Diffley Road,
Yes.
where the public has recently suffered a terrible loss of a child. There's quite a conversation going on. I'll be polite and call it a conversation between the residents and the city council, the school board, and Dakota County officials. How do you, as a reporter, the residents will read this and feel that it doesn't adequately represent their anger.
Sure.
And it makes the decision makers look, are you intentionally trying to make it as neutral as possible in reporting, or can you express some of the really painful emotions that people are sharing? And this happened just at a meeting this past week, and I know that there was some extremely emotional folks. Are you trying in any way not to keep it a little bit more neutral when you report?
To keep it neutral. I think so. Maybe that's fair. To keep it. No, obviously. So this was a forum on a road safety. Unfortunately, a young student was killed while riding a bike to school, and it's a highly emotional story. And I covered it, and I wrote an article about what the reaction was. To capture the passion from people, it's hard to do at times. But
Without sounding, I mean, I know you don't want to come out as biased or telling people being exaggerative, but that's got to be one of the most challenging parts of your job.
Yeah, it is. It
try
can
and
be
keep it
challenging
neutral.
to be neutral. I don't live in Eagan. I live in St. Paul. So I don't. It's an important story. It's an important thing to cover, and I try to mentally just try to say, okay, here's what happened. Here's what the comments were. Here's what the comments that I felt were from officials. I tried to make sure that I kind of stuck to what the reaction to the and what people said, and try to explain.
And that's interesting because I've often wondered. There's more quotes from the elected officials than there are the people, but they're actually the ones that need to be held accountable for some of their decisions and actions. So it makes sense that those are the ones that get reported.
Yeah.
I know in this particular issue there was several community members who are discouraged by the fact that this keeps coming back to statements that this whole thing started in February of this past
Sure,
year,
yeah.
knowing full well that this actually started 10 years prior to that. Those are the kinds of things that I think readers see that they get frustrated by. So I don't know how, in your position, that can type of dating the controversy over the timeline. Because if you look at the timeline that people have been discussing it versus since February.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on that? How do you end up?
Well, I mean, aside from writing, I mean, I've covered Egan for 3 years. This issue was certainly brought to my attention about a year ago.
Okay.
When they were going to work on a specific project
Yep.
that along that road. It wasn't all encompassing on this; it was just part of this project
That's
along
right.
this road. And so it was certainly drawn to my attention, and it was one of several projects in the city, and it generated a lot more interest than most of them at the time. And I went to meetings, I covered meetings, and that was when it was drawn to my attention. But as I understand, it has been brought to people's attention for 10 years. And aside from just reporting that,
And you can just report on what's happening
that's
today.
what's, like, aside from saying, hey, this has been an issue for 10 years, that's what, residents are saying this has been an issue for 10 years.
Fair enough.
That's what you
report
report.
on
That's what you
the
report
meeting
it.
itself, and here's what was said, and
Here's what was said, and
Yeah.
here's how it went down, and that's
and nobody's ever probably, just like you said in this other incident, with the airstrip noise. I mean, nobody's ever going to feel like they're getting 100%, but you're doing excellent, and I love the paper, and
Sure.
I do. I'm one of the few people who grabs it every week, and I can't wait for my Friday paper to come in the mail. So, we just have a couple minutes to go.
Sure.
Do you have some young kids, and they're going to become consumers of the news? And what would be your parenting advice for young kids and anyone who's a consumer of print media, and especially local media? Any advice for worry about this, don't worry about that?
Well, I mean, for young kids, I mean, it's interesting. I sometimes think if newspapers will be around when my children are old, but I hope news will be around. They know I work for a newspaper, and I hope the future stays engaged and is informed.
And they're too young to read the papers now, but are you saving past editions for them for when they're old enough?
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, they know what I do, and a lot of times they come with me to things. They come if I have to go to a festival or something, or art show or something. They're usually not that far behind.
And you'll stick with the local paper and not move away to one of the bigger city
don't know.
papers?
At this point, no. I'm not interested in moving on.
We certainly appreciate everything that you do to help build our community, strengthen our community, and continue to be a watchdog for our local government.
No? Well,
So
thanks.
thank you so much for coming
sure.
on. It was really nice
Thank
to talk
you.
with you. Appreciate it.